Okay, so hello and good evening to you from Giant Freddy Kwindani. We are humbled to have you today as a speaker on the topic proactively tackling hyperinflation in Africa. This has become a menace in Africa, and today there's abject poverty, and people are just trooping into other continents to find their way of surviving. People are leaving our continent, and the problem in Africa keeps on getting worse and worse and worse off. But today we have a very phenomenal freedom giant by name Freedom Giant Freddy Kwindani from the Malawian Anatomy, works with the Ombudsman in Malawi. And we have him here today who will be talking to us about hyperinflation and how we can tackle this menace and indeed control the economic systems, recover our economies, recover our shocks, and indeed ensure a stable economy in Africa, in all countries. We welcome you today, Freedom Giant Freddy Kwindani, and we proceed with you to begin with the lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for giving me this opportunity that I can share. Although this topic is very wide, I was telling you I will just try to lecture, but it's very wide. Yeah, so this evening I will just start with defining the meaning of the inflation. Inflation is a decrease in the purchasing power of money, reflecting in a general increase in the prices of goods and services in an economy. According to many writers, inflation is a situation where too much money chases too few goods and services. Inflation is measured by the Consumer Price Index. Therefore, there is an imbalance between the money supply and the gross domestic product. There are many types of inflation, like demand pull inflation, cost push inflation, supply side inflation, but inflation can be divided into two broad types. Open inflation, when the price level is in an economy rises continuously, and repressed inflation, when the economy suffers from inflation without any apparent rise in prices. According to Keynes, inflation is an imbalance between the aggregate demand and aggregate supply of goods and services. Therefore, if the aggregate demand exceeds the aggregate supply, then the prices keep rising. Understanding inflation. While it is easy to measure the price changes of individual products, such as human needs, extended beyond just one or two products, individuals need a big and diversified set of products, as well as host of service for living a comfortable life. They include commodities like food, grain, metal, fuel, utilities like electricity and transportation, and services like healthcare, entertainment, and labor. Inflation aims to measure the overall impact of price changes for a diversified set of products and services. It allows for a single value representation of the increase in the price level of goods and services in any economy over a period of time. Price rise, which means that one unit of money buys fewer goods and services. The loss of purchasing power impacts the cost of living for the common public, which ultimately leads to a declaration in economic growth. Causes of inflation. An increase in supply of money is the root of inflation. Though this can play out through different mechanisms in the economy, a country's money supply can be increased by monetary authorities by putting and giving away more money to citizens, legally devaluing the legal tender currency, rolling new new money into existence at reserve account credits through the banking system by purchasing government bonds from banks or the secondary market. That's the most common one. In all these cases, the money ends up losing its purchasing power. The mechanism of how this drives inflation can be clarified into three types: demand pull inflation, cost pull inflation, and built-in inflation. So inflation is caused by other causes of inflation. Are primary causes: increase in public spending, deficit in financing of government spending, increased velocity of circulation, population growth, hoarding, genuine shortage, exports, trade unions, tax reductions. These are some of the things that causes inflation. I can just give an explanation on some of these things, like increase in public spending. In any modern economy, government spending is an important element of the total spending. This is also an important determinant of aggregate demand. Usually in lesser developed countries, the government spending increases, which inevitably creates inflationary pressure on the economy. So inflation is a situation where too much money is chasing too few goods and services in an economy. Hence, an imbalance exists between the gross domestic product and the total money supply. It is caused if the demand for a commodity exceeds its supply, then the excess demand increases. The price of the commodity also. Also, if the price of the factors of producers increases, the price of commodity increases too. Inflation can also be measured. There are many different measures in inflation, all of which attempt to track changes in the price level of a series of goods. One of the most cited is the Consumer Price Index, CPI. This tracks the average price of a representative basket of goods that households buy, weighed by how much they spend on them. When the CPI rises, it means the price that households face have risen on average. Yeah, if there are types of inflations, based on speed, there are 4 different types of inflation. There is the hyperinflation, there is the galloping, there is walking, and creeping. When the inflation is 50% a month, then it leads to hyperinflation. This happens really when inflation is more than 10%, then it is known as galloping inflation. When the rise in prices is 3% to 10% in a year, then it is known as walking inflation. When the rise in prices is 3% or less, then it is known as creeping inflation. So hyperinflation doesn't occur without any indication. If economists see signs of hyperinflation, the central bank will implement any monetary policy tools allowed to. So we are now going to talk about hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is a term to describe rapid, excessive, and out of control general price increases in any economy. When inflation measures the pace of rising prices for goods and services, hyperinflation is meaning that it is 50 the underlying production economy in conjunction with a central bank printing excessive money. Hyperinflation can cause a surge in prices of essential goods such as food and fuel as demand outpaces supply. While these scenarios are typically rare in developed countries, but here in Africa, they are there. Yeah, so the bottom line on hyperinflation, it is a scenario in which a country's inflation rate rises 50% in 1 month. It is concerned in a country where it cannot afford to meet its obligation or experience circumstances that affect its ability to produce goods and services. So there are examples here in Africa where countries experienced hyperinflation, where the rate of the inflation rose up to 50% in a month or even higher. There are examples like Zimbabwe. There are examples, another example is Sudan. These countries experienced hyperinflation just because, like Zimbabwe, just because of bad governance. There was too much supply of money supply in the system that enabled the economy could not control. So because of bad governance, there was this hyperinflation in Zimbabwe. In Sudan, the hyperinflation rate is almost 80%. This has come because of the civil war. The civil war has caused hyperinflation in Sudan. So there are several measures that government can take to reduce this. This includes reducing money supply, increasing taxes, and cutting government spending. In addition, government can also implement policies to increase competition in the marketplace and promote price stability. High inflation rates can have significant consequences in the economy, as they can lead to an increased poverty and a decrease in economic activity. It is important for government to take steps to reduce inflation and promote economic growth and development. The other thing that the governments can encourage citizens is to engage in international trade. They should have many manufacturing. There should be many factories where goods are being manufactured. This can also help to decrease the hyperinflation. Digitalization also reduces money supply in an economy. So other platforms such as mobile money, transfer of cash without bank transfers, without using cash, it is also another means of reducing inflation. We should all be proactive in order for us to defeat this hyperinflation in our continent, Africa. We should all be proactive. Just like the example of Zimbabwe, bad governance contributed much to the rise of inflation up to more than 50%. Corruption, bad governance is an evil to this continent. Civil wars in this continent have contributed much to the sufferings of the people. People are now in poverty. People are poor just because of these wars. So if we can stop, if these wars can be stopped, then we can go very far. We can copy other economies like the European Union. At least they are working towards being a single bloc. The USA is a single bloc. China is a single bloc. But Africa, we are a people we are about 1.4 billion people, yet we are divided. We are not a single bloc. So this division has let us down. This has promoted corruption, bad governance, and even civil wars, because we are not divided. We are not united, we are divided. So because of this, we are unable to grow economically. We hear of there is another bloc that has just started, the BRICS. At least they are moving. Although it has taken one country from Africa what else can they do? We do, if we Africans, we are not making any good use of this country. So we should be very proactive. All the civil wars in Africa must stop. Civil wars are now old-fashioned things. Bad governance must not. Bad governance is a thing of the past. How can a party or any individual rig elections and that same person who rigs election, how can someone who, what will stop them from stealing government resources if they rig elections? So it's time for us to push for results now. No, we should push for results. We should engage the AU. Of course, the AU has got good ideas for Africa. There is that Agenda 2063. It's a nice plan, but it seems that they don't know that Africa is like a house that is on fire. How can someone whose house is on fire act like that? We should look up to. AU should come to our rescue. AU should act urgently so that Africa should be rescued. So I concluded saying that hyperinflation in Africa is caused by bad governance. Hyperinflation in Africa is caused by civil wars that can be stopped at any time, but wars, they are always coming and repeating. There are wars in most of the countries in Africa, DRC, Somalia, Eritrea. We should not be talking about wars, but we should be talking about development, developing our nations, developing our continent, coming together, uniting. Let us be talking about uniting, having a single currency, coming together to be a one block, and then these other we can do away with the hyperinflation in Africa if we proactively say we should come together, we should be united, we should have a single currency. We should seriously think about these things. Then it will be to our own advantage. That's all I wanted to say to all the African Voices members, African Voices giants, that we as giants, we should stand for our nation, our continent, Africa. We should be proactive. We should do something now, not later on. As if our house is on fire. So when your house is on fire, you don't wait for tomorrow. You rush, you take anything that you can get to put out the fire. So our country is like, it's on fire. But we as giants, we should rescue it. Thank you very much.